Scholars, open up your books to page 231 and follow along. Top of page 231. I said, I'll let you hear me in 3 weeks when we're all on stage together. They laughed again, and the thug said, I'm gonna let you in on something, Sleepy LeBone. There's certain members of this band that you will be out playing in 3 weeks, but it's gonna take you a whole lot longer to top me. On the real tip, it's gonna take you at least 10 years before you'll be able to even hold my drumsticks. Steady Eddie said, Yeah, and that's about 9 years and 10 months longer than you'll be with the band. Thug. The thug said, Aw, man, you ain't gonna start that up again. You gotta let me in. You gotta let me know what you heard. I said, Can I be excused? Eddie said, Go, head on, Sleepy LeBone. I'll be back. I told my bandmates, Thank you again, thank you very much. The thug said, Nothing to it, little man. Dirty Deed said, You don't let that horn whip you, son. Doodoo Bug said, Our pleasure, Sleepy. Steady Eddie said, Man, get out of here. I picked up both of Mama's pictures, my horn, and the can of Brasso and ran up the stairs. When I got upstairs, I saw that Herman E. Calloway's door was still open a crack. Miss Thomas's door was closed now, and I could hear the two of them in her room talking real soft to each other. I could have stood outside the door and listened if I wanted to, but that would have been rude. Besides, I didn't know for sure how long it would take me to polish up my new horn. I went into my mother's room and put my sacks on the bed that Mamma used to sleep in when she was a little girl. I put her smiling picture on the dressing table, then reached under her bed and pulled my sacks case out again. I snapped the two silver snaps and started taking out all of my things. I took my old blanket out and remade my bed with it. I wasn't going to need to carry it around with me anymore. I opened the tobacco pouch and took out the rock that said Flint on it and set it on the bed. I took the pouch and the flyers and walked down the hall to Hermione Calloway's room. Even though I could still hear him and Miss Thomas talking and boo-hooing in her room, I knocked on his door anyway. When no one answered, I opened it. We're going to pause right there. I want to go back to our quiz and answer this first question here. The first question asks, what might Bud's remaking the bed with his own blanket represent? I want you to consider the role of the blanket throughout the novel. What has this blanket meant to Bud? I want you to think about all the different times that he's talked about it. How has he used this blanket? We know how Bud feels about his things. He feels very attached to all of his things. So why might him remaking the bed with his own blanket be important? I want you to write that here. Pause it when you're done. Come back. Go. All right, now that we have the first answer completed, let's go back into our book and continue reading. We're still on page 232. He had one of those dressing tables with a mirror stuck on the back of it too, so I walked real quick over to it and set the flyers and the bag of four rocks down. I got out of his room as fast as I could. Whew! Even though it was me who'd carried them around all these years, you'd have to be a pretty big liar if you'd say those rocks and flyers really belonged to me. Herman E. Calloway's name was all over the flyers, and his writing was all over the rocks. Besides, the way he'd looked so shook up when he saw those rocks for the first time, I figured they meant more to him than they did to me anyway. I went back over to Mama's dressing table and opened the little drawer. I took one of the thumbtacks out and went back to Mama's bed. Next, I took out the envelope that had her picture in it. I took out the picture of her riding the sad, saggy pony. I still couldn't see what she was so unhappy about. The misbegotten moon park looked like somewhere you could have a lot of fun. I poked the thumbtack into the top of Mama's picture and walked to the wall that she'd stuck all the pictures of horses on. I put Mama right amongst all those ponies and horses she liked so much. I didn't need to carry that doggone picture around. This wasn't how I remembered Mama anyway. Mama was always excited and jumpy, not sad and poky like this little girl. Mama was kind of old when I met her, too. She wasn't young like this picture at all. The picture looked like it belonged. It's strange the way things turn out. Here I'd been carrying Mama all around for all this time, and I'd finally put her somewhere she wanted to be. Back in her old bedroom, amongst all her horses. We're going to pause right there, scholars, and go over to our quiz. Our next question asks, how would the meaning of this line be different if the author made the changes in bold? The line is the one that we just read, starting with the picture looked like, ending with back amongst all her horses. If you need to pause this video and reread that quote, do that now. Go. So we want to know how it would change if we made the changes in bold. The second quote says, the picture looked like it fit. It's strange the way things turn out. Here I'd been carrying Mama's picture around all this time, and finally I'd put her somewhere back she wanted to be. Finish the quote. So we're changing looked like it belonged to looked like it fit, and changing I'd been carrying Mama around to I'd been carrying Mama's picture around. Why does it change when we change the word belong to the word fit? How are those words different? And then the second part, how does it change the meaning if it goes from carrying Mama around to just carrying Mama's picture? How is that different? Is carrying someone or their spirit around different than just carrying a picture of them? Tell me why or why not. Pause the video. All right, and now we are going to finish up this chapter, scholars. Let's go back to our book. Bottom of page 233. I went back to the bed and picked the flint rock up. It was going to be enough. I didn't need those other things with me all of time. I didn't need them to remind me of Mama. I didn't think about her anymore. If there were 100 hours in every day and 1,000 days in every week, I couldn't think of my Mama any better than I already do. All I have to do is remember her hand on my forehead when she'd ask me something like, "Baby, are you sick? Have you got a temperature?" All I have to do is remember Mama letting me dry the dishes after she'd washed them, how she used to say no one in the world could dry a plate the way I could. All I have to do is take 2 or 3 deep breaths and think of all the books she'd read to me at night, and remember that no matter how long it took, she'd read until I went to sleep. Desmond Malone was right. I was carrying Mama inside me, and there wasn't anyone or anything that could take away from that or add to it either. The one rock from Flint would be enough. I said it in my sax case. All right, scholars, we are actually going to pause one more time and finish this last question in this section. And this question asks, what does Bud mean when he says the Flint rock was going to be enough? And we want to consider the conversation he had with Desmond Malone back in the Hooverville on page 73. If you don't remember, that conversation talked about him carrying his family with him, how he wasn't truly alone. And at the time, he figured, yeah, I have this stuff inside my suitcase. But why is it that the flint rock is going to be enough? Why might the flint rock now just be enough? He doesn't have to carry every single thing with him. Pause the video, answer that question. Now that all our questions are done, let's actually finish this book. I picked up my saxophone. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I wet the reed the same way I'd seen Steady Eddie do, then clamped it on the mouthpiece. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. If after I got to 10 I blew the horn and it sounded pretty good, I knew I'd be playing along with the Dusky Devastators of the Depression in a week or two. If it didn't sound so good, it meant I'd have to practice for a couple of months before I'd be good enough to get on stage with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I puffed my cheeks and blew as hard as I could. The saxophone only squeaked, squawked, and groaned, then sounded like it was making up words like oronk and rajaga and halupa. Shucks, maybe I didn't puff my cheeks out right. Maybe I was blowing too hard. I counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This time the horn only squeaked, squawked, and groaned. It didn't sound like I was trying to make up any words. It sounded great. It wasn't perfect, like when Steady blew it, but I could tell that one day it was going to be. Something told me I could learn how to play this. Something told me that those sounds were more than just bad notes. If you didn't have a real good imagination, you'd probably think those noises were the sounds you'd probably think the noises were the sounds of some kid blowing a horn for the first time, but I knew better than that. I could tell those were the squeaks and squawks of one door closing and another one opening. I looked at the picture of Mama that Miss Thomas gave me. Mama was looking right at me with that same soft smile. I know it's stupid to smile back at a picture, but I couldn't help myself. I know it's even stupider to talk to a picture, especially when it hadn't said anything or to start a conversation, but I had to say, "Here we go again, Mama. Only this time I can't wait." I closed my eyes and began practicing. Shucks. As good as things were going for me now, I bet you dollars to a donut that Steady Eddie was going to get here early. All right, scholars, we have finished Bud Not Buddy. So when you're done with this, hit the next button and we will do the summative writing.